everyone. Welcome to the Healthy Team Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Erickson, and this is the show where we dive into the real stories behind thriving workplace cultures, exploring everything from wellness and morale to leadership and productivity. Today, I'm joined by David Olcott, founder and CEO of Samurai Success, an executive personal coaching firm based here in Denver. And with more than 30 years of experience coaching leaders and teams across the United States and Hong Kong, David's focus is on building strategies for sustainable growth, even through tough times. David's a speaker, martial artist, and author. We're going to talk about what it takes to stay well and productive while managing the risks that come with leadership and growth. David, welcome to the show.
Mark, thanks so much for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. David, let's kick things off by having you tell us a little bit about your business and the kind of work you and your team do at Samurai Success.
Excellent. So I grew up in Florida. The little dots on the end of the Florida Keys there actually is where I grew up. Cool. So I literally, Mark, have spent more of my life underneath the water or on the water than I have on top of the water growing up anyway. So I grew up down there, got involved in the university system, studied finance, of course, then got involved in banking, law, and real estate, politics, and eventually went to work for a guy named Tony Robbins. So all that adventure really kind of led me on this path because when I was down in South Florida, real estate, I was working with a company down there, and the owner of that company became the number one selling real estate agent in the world. And I was this business manager. My job was to build the teams and the structure and the systems, if you will, to support that. And we were selling to, the stars of everything. Star Island, of course, is down in there in Miami. We were selling to those folks, Madonna, Prince, Sylvester Stallone, all these big names. And I was living this amazing life. As a matter of fact, our office was actually on a yacht, if you can believe that. So we would travel around the intercoastal selling all these different properties. And Mark, the most interesting thing happened to me during that time. Of all the great things going on in my life at 26 years old, I was depressed out of my mind. I was really unhappy. It's probably the darkest I'd ever been, and I shouldn't have been. I was living the life that I thought I was supposed to live, that I dreamt of living. I was living it, and yet I was still experiencing these amazing things. Something was missing. And so that took me on a very different journey of finding out there's something more going on in this world than just chasing things, getting the girl, getting the job, getting getting all these things. And I was like, I've got to find a different way. Samurai Success was born from that passion and finding out there is a different way. We actually have technology to really support us, that we can actually blend our egos and our souls together to really create a remarkable life. And that's what we help people do.
Wow, fantastic. Well, excited to learn even more about that. David, so you've coached leaders through some pretty tough spots, through some challenging times. What patterns have you seen in how the best leaders take care of themselves or don't take care of themselves during those periods of chaos and difficulty?
So as interesting as humans, we tend to give away what we possess, right? I know that sounds really strange, but if you want to make sure that there is brownies at the Christmas party, what do you need to bring to the Christmas party? You need to bring brownies. So this idea, this metaphor, if you will, is that if you're really upset with life, you're really angry and frustrated, guess what you're sharing with everybody else? The most incredible leaders that I've met personally, studied them, interviewed them myself, always have this amazing ability to be able to see past all the stuff going on and look into their future, stay focused on their mission and purpose. They're very clear about who they are and what they want out of this lifetime, and nothing seems to distract them. That's a fascinating thing, because when you understand the power of that, you start seeing how spiritual technology actually runs into business, where an identity that you've created for yourself over time creates consistency. That consistency is what creates congruency. Congruency over time creates coherence. And coherence, Mark, is that focal point, that frequency that everybody talks about, the attractor factor, that's your focal point of your attractor factor. And that's the stuff you're bringing into your life. So if you notice yourself being frustrated and angry a lot of your life, then you can imagine why frustration and anger shows up in your life so much. But if you're joyful and happy and driven by certain things, you'll find that the universe actually provides that shared experience so that you can move forward into it.
Beautiful. I love that. David, what does your own personal wellness routine look like these days? And how has it changed over time, especially going back to that, that period in time you were talking about where on paper everything looked so good,
Ugh.
you just weren't happy at that time. What's changed?
So probably one of the most remarkable things that I've discovered over this lifetime is that I was on a path of being able to find out who I am. I was there. I thought from all the movies I saw, the tapes, the people on stage, seminars, programs, tapes, books. I don't know how. Maybe I just interpreted it the wrong way. But I will tell you, it's a pretty shared experience when I share this with people. And that is, we seem to have this idea that we're here to discover who we are. And through one master that I really am truly, truly thankful for, I discovered that you're not here to discover who you are. You're actually here to create who you are. Now, I'm hoping that I'm impressing you with the profoundness of that statement, because when I first heard it, I just blew by it. I was like, what the hell is he talking about? Kind of stuff. But as I grew into it, I was recognizing the most successful people, the celebrities that and as a matter of fact, there is no one that you can name that has any fame whatsoever that isn't using that technology. They may have a group of people around them creating this identity, this image, whatever this is. But the reason Taylor Swift or Donald Trump or Arnold Schwarzenegger is because there's this image or identity that they've created and they bring forth in their actions. So when you understand the power of that, creating this identity and then doing the actions that respond to that, that's what creates that consistency. And that's the most powerful ally I have in my life, is aligning my behaviors with who I believe I am and creating that kind of consistency. That drives me to make sure I stay healthy and work out 5 or 6 times a week, martial arts 3 or 4 times a week, working out in the gym 3 or 4 times a week. And I have coaches in each one of those lives. I have teachers in my life to make sure I stay accountable to those things, because those things are important to my mission and purpose.
Wow, that's great. So you're doing a lot of different things with both physical workout, or you mentioned you had coaches for martial arts. What about for things like nutrition? You mentioned spirituality. How do those things fit into this life that you've created, David?
Well, I've definitely found that by finding coaches, mentors that I really trust and I admire and give them permission to hold me accountable, I accelerate being my best. So my physical coach, when I go to my trainer, he's also my nutritionist. So when I go to my spiritual coach, who is a best-selling author, and I've studied with him for the last 27 years, Neil Donald Walsh, I make sure that I bring the big questions so that I can get really clear about those things, because I can't always see them for myself. Have you ever noticed that, Mark, where you're so good, or I'm so good at being able to see things in other people, but not always for myself? So having those coaches in my life really allow me to explore me in a safe environment, so I can really get to know me and know how I work and how I am my best, so I can be that every single day. That every single dayness, if you will, being my best, really creates some amazing results.
Wow, that's awesome. That makes a lot of sense. David, in your coaching work, how do you help people navigate periods of big risk? Say they're wanting to level up, and maybe it's professionally, the risks might even be personal risks. But
Yes.
how do you help them do that? And without, sometimes people get paralyzed, right? They get frozen, they're intimidated by trying to level up. How do you coach people through situations like that?
So yeah, an analysis paralysis, right? Where you're in this information, you got all this data, but you don't know how to organize it, kind of thing. So we have a really unique approach at Samurai Success from a business standpoint. From a business standpoint, when you hire us as a coach, you actually get 3 coaches, not 1. The first of our coaches, we have actually a pod system. So when you work with Samurai Success in your business and you're the owner of that business, You have a psychology or peak performance coach. That's the head coach position. Then there's a design coach, person that helps you map out all the different structure and stories of your business. How does this process work? Because if you really want to duplicate yourself, then you have to be able to write the stuff down you have in your head, write it down so other people can follow it. That recipe for success, as long as it's stored in your head and not written down, you can train, teach it all you want auditorily. Most people you're training are kinesthetic and visual. So you're missing the boat on this one, and it's why it's so frustrating. So by designing that, mapping that stuff out, we literally get on the same page as each other. We see the same picture. And that, that single thing alone can really drive performance, morale, turnover, everything else, because we're literally on the same page. We're agreeing with things. And then the third component of that is the financial matrix, financial optimization. Your programming, your peak performance, who you are and how you work through things, your processes that you work through things actually have a financial result. And we show you those things. So in the first 10 years, we used to battle with clients. I know this because I am so, I've done all this experience. We don't do that anymore. We simply show you as the entrepreneur that says, hey, when you do this behavior in this process, you get this result. When you do this behavior in this process, you get this result. Which process or result do you like best? And then you can make some choices. And I will tell you, if there's one fundamental thing about entrepreneurs that you have to understand, is that if it isn't their idea, they're not going to implement it anyway.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, I think entrepreneurs often have blind spots in that area. That's interesting. So, David, what advice would you give to, say, a small business owner or entrepreneur who feel like they're just one move away from collapse or from giving up? You know how hard it is to start a new business, and I talk to people all the time who are really struggling to level up. They're just not sure they're going to make it. How would you guide somebody like that, David?
So how I would guide something like this is actually taking them through that process that we have. We'd sit you down, and the very first thing we do with our clients is create a financial baseline, because any changes we do with you, we want to make sure that we can measure that through clear metrics moving forward. So financial baseline says, hey, this is what you're doing right now. As we start adding this new change of psychology and these new things of design work and these new metrics of measurements and financials, how is that moving your performance about where you want to be able to go? Probably the most important thing that we underestimate when it comes to scaling is something really fundamental, which means the foundation of which you build that building of scale. Like, you have a 1-floor building, you just started off, you're doing pretty well, you're paying your bills, those kind of things. Maybe you have an employee, maybe you don't. Maybe you have some friends, staff members, your dog involved in your business at this point. You're building that foundation on that first floor is really critical. Most people don't realize as they start building the second floor, it starts weakening that foundation. So the foundation is what matters. That's why we always start with that foundational baseline and structural baseline to make sure as we scale your business, it has the footing that it needs to be on concrete as opposed to sand.
That's excellent. Are there any tools or mental models that you regularly share with your clients to help them make clear decisions during periods of stress?
Yeah, emotional intelligence is a really big factor when it comes to making decisions. But I will tell you, there's a lot of other elements, like when you know exactly where you're located. So some of the tools that we use at Samurai Success, or some of our BAM trackers or BTAs, these are financial terms, but we have a really unique approach to it because most people do not know how to read their financials. It's nothing wrong with that. You're welcome to the group, because there's not a lot of training when it comes to business ownership and actually reading your financials. So most people push those away because they don't want to deal with mathematics. We help you fall in love with that stuff, because that stuff really helps you make quality decisions. Without that real data, and that data being credible, then you're making decisions that are really actually hurting your business and you don't even know it. So getting back on track of making sure you have those mindset, skill set, tool set to really move things forward. Specifically, let's use something called the GAP technology as a tool. If you know as an entrepreneur where you want to go, that's great. But more importantly, you have to understand where you're currently or presently located. If you want to go from California to Florida or Florida to California, you got to know those two vectors. Most entrepreneurs are really talented in understanding where they want to go, but they don't have a clear picture of where they presently are. We help you really craft that present situation, because once you know where you're really located, honestly, credibly, and where you want to be able to go, the resource plan actually becomes very easy. What makes it difficult is when you know clearly where you want to go, but you do not know where you presently are. It's hard to build a resource plan that has any kind of traction, because if that location keeps changing, I think I'm further ahead than I actually am, and you start building on that, you're actually going to sink into that sand and collapse the business.
Wow, interesting. So, so a lot of the people you talk with, they think they're further along than they really are.
Well, it's interesting because as entrepreneurs, we have to speak a very different language. We actually have to speak in future terms. So when you talk to a true entrepreneur, they're actually talking about things that have not happened yet as if they've already happened. That's the entrepreneurial brain. Now, this creates a lot of conflict in their businesses because the managers and technicians are in there going, well, that's not happening. But true entrepreneurs have to have that vision. They have to speak that vision as it's actually happening today. And that can get you in trouble because it looks like a lie, or it looks like a fib, or it looks like something to other people. But that's what entrepreneurs, to be able to drive things to this. Ford is a great example. All the engineers on the planet told Henry Ford that the V8 engine couldn't be created. He was talking, speaking as if it already existed. He was already talking to customers before the first Model T ever came off the line with a V8 engine in it, as it actually existed, because that's how you actually create and manifest things. You have to speak them into existence. Even when other people deny their reality, you have to stay with it. That's a tough game to play by yourself. So that's why we help you really stay on that track and then build the structure to complete the dream.
Great, great. David, you often talk about the shift from worrier to warrior. What does that mean in practical terms from somebody leading a team?
So it's an interesting concept, also known as the frequency of the frequency. And so what I'm saying is when you meet someone really charismatic, right, and they've got this, I don't know what it is, but this energy about them, you just can't help. You want to get to know them. And then there's other people you meet, you're like, whoa, I don't really want to spend any more time with them. What are you reading as a human being? You're reading their frequency, you're reading their energy, you're reading their vibration. Now, I know that sounds a little woo-woo, but you have this talent, and as a matter of fact, it protects you a lot. That frequency that you have as you walk around as a leader and you're in your company has the biggest impact on other people. That consistency, because that's how people really read you, and they predict how you're going to do things for the future, because that becomes the trust. Oh, that's how I know David. That's how I know Mark. And then when David or Mark shows up differently, they're like, I don't know this person. Who is this person? So that frequency, that energy, that consistency is so important for moving companies forward.
Interesting. And how does that, understanding that frequency, how does that work with the worrier to warrior?
So instead of warrior versus a worrier, someone who worries a lot, or someone's a warrior, let's imagine that word is abundance and scarcity. So if you are acting from a place of scarcity, and that's just your model of success, and by the way, there's a lot of very successful people who use scarcity as a driving force to be able to make more money or become more successful. They're constantly on the hot seat, like, I got to do more, I got to do more. And that's very successful for some people. There's a cost of that later on, by the way, because if you've spent your whole life in that scarcity model, then you will run into not enoughness. No matter how much money you have, how much love you have, how much health you have or do not have, you're constantly driven by that motivational strategy of scarcity. That's the worrier. The warrior takes a very abundant approach to things. And this one we see long-term really has the huge benefit, because yes, stuff's going to happen in your business, stuff that you can't expect. Some pretty awful stuff sometimes can happen in your business. And we deal with those with our clients all the time, so that you're not alone with that. But the warrior energy stays in that place of abundance. And now we go back to this frequency of how the universe, if you will, rewards people in that place. You see that someone's identity over time creates that consistency. That consistency over time creates that congruency, and that congruency creates coherence. And that frequency, how often you're in that place of abundance, is how you attract things into your life. So if you're struggling with really getting things that you want out of life, you may want to switch your motivational strategy from scarcity to abundance.
Absolutely. David, you've worked in politics, you've worked in business and martial arts. What thread ties those experiences all together for you?
So as a coach, you're asking your clients to do something new they've never done before, which would be called the learning curve, right? They have to enter into something they feel really uncomfortable with. So all of our coaches here at Samurai Success embark in these crazy events every couple of years to make sure that we get ourselves in the learning curve. Because if we're asking you to do something that we're not willing to do, that's going to be incongruent. You won't listen to that stuff. And you shouldn't listen to that stuff because it's not authentic. So we put ourselves in the learning curve so that we remember how it feels as a human being to go into something we don't know about. For example, I grew up in the Florida Keys, like I told you earlier, right? I've never ice skated before in my life, Mark. Never. And I joined a hockey team. I've never ice skated before. I've never done any of this stuff. And at the end of 18 months, I was the assist leader on the team and we won the summer championship. How does that happen? That happens through amazing technology that you and I both have, which we can actually change our subconscious programming in our minds to be able to start performing at higher levels. Because the things that we're manifesting in our life, 95% of them come from your subconscious part of your brain, not your conscious part of your brain. So read all the books you want, go all the tapes you want, do all the coaching you want. If you don't change that subconscious programming, you're not going to change the experiences of your life. We at Samurai Success have found a way to be able to do that, and that's what we help our clients do.
Wow, that's interesting. And so you talk about technology and using technology to unlock the power of the subconscious. Could you expand a little bit more on that? What you mean by the technology? Is it an app? Is it a system? If you could go in a little more detail, that I think people would love to hear about it.
Sure. So the process that we've developed here is something called the I Am Studio. And it blends a lot of amazing neuroscience work and NLP work, if you've ever heard about that, neuro-linguistic programming. So right now that we understand there's 4 or 5 major ways, if you will, adding the I Am Studio to it, but 4 major ways to really change your subconscious programming. So let me be as crystal clear as I can before I jump into this. Your subconscious programming is attracting things into your life, not your conscious part of your brain. 95% of everything that you're experiencing in your life is being attracted by the subconscious part of your brain. This is technology. This is human technology. I'll give you an example. You're driving down the road. Someone cuts in front of you. You have an immediate meaning about what that means. It's already pre-programmed into your subconscious mind that goes, oh, that jerk just cut me off. And you have a response and reaction to that. Now that's fascinating because the same thing happens with risk taking, especially in business. An opportunity comes to you, but you can't see it because your programming doesn't allow you to do it. It actually creates a scotoma, a blind spot where you can't see the opportunity. Yet someone standing right next to you can see the opportunity. And I know you've experienced this. Somewhere in your life, you're like, how did you see that? How we see things has everything to do with the technology in between our ears, the subconscious part of your programming. You are programmed to see things or not see things. If you'd like to take control of those, there's 4 ways to do that. First way to be able to do that is through hypnosis. Second way to be able to do that is being able to use NLP or Psych-K technologies to be able to help you actually change that subconscious programming. Third way is to be able to do is we spend a lot of time here at Samurai Success is by practicing a new behavior that'll actually change through your brain science, if you will, neuroplasticity it's called, that the brain just likes to find new and faster, better ways to do things. So if you practice something enough times, the 10,000 rule, you've heard about 10,000 hour rule, practice it enough times, the brain will go, yes, that's a faster way to be able to do it. So practice helps. Fourth way is being in love. As a matter of fact, it's an amazing thing that happens, Mark. When people fall in love, the model from 5% to 95% shifts. People that are in love, especially with their business, are actually can manifest 95% of things in their life from the conscious part of their brain. What's going on here? Now that technology amazed me. So when we built the IM Studio, we actually take you into this process, if you will. It's called the Sophie program, and it's Swords of Illumination, which is the book we've written. And these are the elements of how you can change your subconscious programming, then come into studio, your own words, your voice, using theta-based frequency change elements, which theta-based frequency stuff allows your subconscious to open up to new ideas. That's why by the time you're 7 years old, most of your identification of program, or how you're going to identify a particular subject, how much money you can make, how healthy you're going to be, how much love you're going to have, has all been determined by the time you're 7, because that's when your brain frequency changes so dramatically from theta to beta. And beta blocks that information from getting into your subconscious. It protects it, if you will. So using this new technology, we are able to actually get into the subconscious and reprogram that using the direction you want to go. Not my language, not anybody else's language, your vision. And it's so powerful to watch people explore that and see that they can really make the changes.
Wow, that really does sound powerful. So you mentioned a book. So you've written a book, David. Is that something people could pick up on Amazon, or where would people find out more about the book you mentioned?
Yes, and we're very excited. We just reached Amazon bestseller level. So we're now working on the New York Times bestseller list. So we're very excited.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you, man. Just really blessed. And Swords of Illumination is, it's a fun book. I really wrote it for myself, and I won't go into the details with that. But I will tell you, as a business owner, if you really want to, or just as a personal life journey thing, that you really want to start making some changes because you just don't like the way life is thing, that first book is really written for you. It's how to understand the elements of how you could actually change that programming. The second book we're reading is the coalescence of both of those into the total technology of 12 swords. So it's a fun adventure for sure. Swords of Illumination.
Wow, that sounds incredible. David, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you again for your time and for sharing your insights. David, before we wrap up, could you let our listeners know where they can find you and learn more about Samurai Success?
Sure. So samuraisuccess.com is the best place to reach us. We're also on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. So if you just look Samurai Success or David C. Olcott under any of those platforms, you'll bring us up. There's a whole bunch of video information there. I think we have 150 videos for you guys to take a look at, a network of this education. So if this resonates with you, there's more information, absolutely free. Go take a look at it, see if it really is resonating with you, and if it's something that you really like to be able to do with your life, and then reach out to us.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. And I'm going to check that out for sure. And anyways, thank you to our listeners also. And we appreciate your tuning in to the Healthy Team Podcast. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like and subscribe and share it with your team or anyone who's passionate about great workplace culture. And we'll be back soon with more great conversations to help you build stronger and healthier teams. And until next time, stay well and lead well. Thank you.